and a very warm welcome to Brand Equity with me, Sonali Krishna. Today's show is a unique one given the subject of discussion and, of course, my guest who's going to shed light on it. It's a heady mix of life, lifestyle, consumerism with shavings of philosophy. Confused? Don't be. You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, one needs to build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. And that pretty much is the conversation that is going to be had today. Now, to just simplify that, today's show questions our current lifestyle and throws some pertinent questions to consumers, marketers, manufacturers, policymakers, and governments alike. It's not breaking news when I say the planet we live in is facing numerous threats, including climate change, dependence on imports for resources, and of course, pressures from increasing pollution and waste. Yes, companies claim that they are doing their bit, but that bit seems to be forced, coupled with an ulterior motive of PR. My guest today is an expert on circular economy. Most of us have heard this term. Companies have claimed to have adopted it, yet no one really has a deep understanding of this much abused term and what it really involves. And that's what I'm about to unravel on this Brand Equity special. Without further ado, let's welcome Charles Huang, chairman and founder of the Circular Taiwan Network, who has immersed himself to advocating the circular economy need and cause. Well, on that note, truly a pleasure having you on my show, Charles, straight from Taipei.
Thank you, Sonali. It's my honor. I look forward to have a great conversation with you, and hopefully we all can learn from this conversation.
Yes, I hope it opens or at least allows my audience to start the process of reflection. But let me start with a very basic question to you for the benefit of myself and my audience. Charles, could you simplistically explain to me what is a circular economy and what is the difference between a circular economy and a linear economy?
Okay, great. Let me start by explaining a little bit the difference between the linear economy and circular economy. Linear economy is the economy that we currently thrive on today. It's a form of economy that takes the raw materials, excavate raw materials, and makes products out of them, sell them to the consumers, and finally consumer dispose of them. Throughout this take, make, own, dispose linear model, or linear chain actually, significant externalities, such as you mentioned, the greenhouse gas, which led to the greenhouse gas emission, which is the root cause of the climate crisis, and of course also pollutants, which are released into the atmosphere. And all this negatively affecting our day-to-day livelihood. That's what linear economy is. And generally we talk about linear economy as it is an economy that is degenerative, it's destructive, and it's extractive. And we can talk further about it later.
Sure.
Now, on the other hand, the circular economy is an economy that is trying to do away with the degenerativeness, destructiveness, and also extractiveness to become a more regenerative, restorative, and inclusive economic form. Now, before I forget, the problem with linear economy is not just take, make, own, dispose. There's another sort of cultural value aspect to the linear economy that is flawed, and which is a distorted, what I call the distorted value norm of linear economy. It's a value norm which considers privatizing the profits and benefits and publicizing or socializing the cost and benefit and cost and risk as the norm in our daily lives, or as well as running a business. In other words, in our daily lives, in running the business, we frequently consider discharging the externality to the public, to the environment as what I call necessary evil, so to speak, for doing business.
Can you just explain that a bit when you say that? Just to understand that more clearly, when you say we externalize, externalize it. What exactly do you mean? If you could give me an example to illustrate what you're trying to say.
Sure. For example, if we, the current supply chain today, you take the raw material, in the process of excavating the raw materials and manufacturing into the raw material that is sellable to the manufacturer, you create lots of pollution to the air. You use a lot of energy. But some of those pollution, the cost of pollution is not included in the business profit zone, so to speak. And then from there, you transport, which again takes a lot of energy and also recharges a lot of pollution to the air and to the water. So all the way from take, make, own, and dispose, the linear chain, you create lots of externalities. And as an example of externalities, climate crisis is one of them. And you mentioned earlier, actually, the shortage of raw material is also an externality.
Yeah.
Raw materials is finite. We are exhaustively using them. Okay, these are some of the externalities that is currently considered a norm for running a business. In other words, if you look at the financial statements of companies, generally the external cost is not included. And therefore, the profit, is it true profit? No, it is not in a linear economy. The public the publics are absorbing the externalities through the tax we pay, through the health sort of deterioration of health hazard. And these are the examples.
Sure. I've never actually looked at it like that, but yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so linear economy is full with externalities. And I'll add a little bit more if you don't mind.
Of course.
Climate crisis is one of them, and pollution is one of them, and shortage of raw material is one of them. But more indirectly on the social front, linear economy is also the root cause for example, the rural and the city gap and rich and poor gap in our lives. These are all the examples, negative examples or negative implications from the prevailing economic model, the linear model.
Got it. Okay, so you've explained to me in depth what is the linear economy. What you've been advocating through your work in Taiwan and of course, with other countries which are, pro to actually change things around. What is circular economy? What are the benefits? And why is it important for companies, governments, and consumers to think about this seriously?
Well, linear economy is, as we just talked about, is the root cause of a number of externalities we face today. And I refer to them as our collective crisis. It's a problem that every country faces.
Absolutely.
Now, in other words, if we were to mitigate all these externalities, be it climate crisis, shortage of raw materials, pollution, social divide, and whatnot, we need to change the economic form, okay, to move away from the destructive nature, the degenerative nature, and extractive nature of the linear economy to circular economy. And circular economy is a more inclusive form of economy. It's a systematic look at our economic model, which means that the raw material suppliers, manufacturers, and also the marketer have to collaborate together to address problems, as opposed to trying to solve problems independently from the market side and manufacturing side independently and raw material, because we live in an interrelated world. So more specifically, circular economy is about changing the way from the demand side on the market side, what is our need? So there's a concept of what we call the 2 R's in circular economy. It's about redefining the needs and redesigning the business model. Before we talk about the 3 R's, reduce, reuse, recycle. Reduce, reuse, recycle is a linear concept. It's what I call the less bad concept. So we challenge ourselves, say, if we were to change the economic model, why can't we start from the very beginning, before the 3 R, the less bad, let's do more good by redefining our needs and then redesign business model accordingly. As an example of redefining the needs, one of the key concepts in circular economy is that we need to shift away from insatiable demand for owning products to asking ourselves fundamentally our needs is actually only the performance of the products. Meaning that, for example, we don't need to own an air conditioner, but what we need is cool air. Now, that kind of paradigm shift on the demand side would change the whole value chain, would change the business model from marketer to manufacturers to raw materials.
But when you say, let's take the air conditioner example. Yes, everybody wants an air conditioner for cool air. And if I say, okay, my end outcome is I want cool air, I'm not really bothered with owning an air conditioner. What happens? Are you suggesting that the manufacturer then becomes a provider of cool air to consumers and we don't really own the air conditioner?
Yes. Ultimately, under this model, what we call product as a service model, in other words, air conditioner as a service, not so much as a tangible product to be owned. In that model, what happened is that you shift the ownership of the products from consumer back to manufacturers. Okay. In other words, the manufacturer owns the product rather than the consumers. And by owning the product by the manufacturers, and the shift to producing cool air more efficiently and to minimize the cost of having to repair the air conditioner, the owner, in this case, the manufacturer, would have an incentive to make sure the product that is delivered to the consumers are of better performance and require less maintenance. So this is a positive thing. And it would extend the product life cycle for air conditioner. Secondly, when the ownership of the air conditioner shift back from consumer to the manufacturer, what happened is that sort of air conditioner become an asset of the manufacturers. So it goes into their, for example, their financial statements as assets, and they can use that for lending or for financing with the bank. And finally, since the third element or the third benefit of product as a service, the cool air model, is that since the owner of the air conditioner is the manufacturer, so he would have all the incentive to make sure at the end of the life cycle, the equipment goes back to their factory to manufacture the next equipment. So this will minimize waste that goes into the incinerators for burning or goes into landfills for disposing. So this would eliminate lots of externalities throughout the supply chain.
So if I've got you right, Charles, what you're saying is, as a customer, I want cool air, so my manufacturer, in the circular model, I will be a subscriber, or it'll be a subscription model of cool air. It is the manufacturer who will own the product and will provide me with cool air for a monthly subscription fee or a yearly subscription fee or whatever that may be. And with that model, hence the manufacturer will ensure that the life of the product is also much longer than, let's say today, if I go and buy an air conditioner, where it is incentivized for a manufacturer for my air conditioner to break down after 4 or 5 years, so I can repurchase. Would that be right?
Exactly. But let me add another benefit for moving what I call the ownership to the subscription model, the benefit to the manufacturer. One other benefit is that in today's economy, where you sell, for example, air conditioner, actually the product is designed for obsolescence. Otherwise,
is it?
Because that's how they make profit, by selling products. So the shorter the product, they can, so I usually very sort of cynically said that most of the air conditioner, the warranty perhaps is 5 years or 3 years. And generally 3 years or 5 years plus one, it will break. Because it's designed to break, so they can sell you another model. Now, what I want you to say is that in a service model, because it's a service model, what happened is that when I, as a manufacturer of the air conditioner and also owner of the air conditioner, but I sell cool air, what happened is that I keep the customer for life from our marketing side of the point. Since your program is called brand equity, in short, I wanted to say is that the service model would foster brand equity and build equity for long terms. Because in the linear model where ownership takes place, you are, as a manufacturer of air conditioner, you're constantly looking for the next customers to try to sell the next model. But in this service model, you keep the customer, quote unquote, for life, because you know the customer better. You have consumer insights better. You gain through the data you collect, you can service them better. So you keep the customer, reduce your marketing acquisition cost.
It sounds ideal, Charles, but I have a few questions. What you're proposing is a complete shift in the consumer mindset and in the company's mindset, because you're expecting me as a consumer then not to have the mentality of owning and hoarding and have a service mentality, and so renting versus ownership. While as usually the general tendency is aspirational with consumers. We love to upgrade. If I own a car, what the car I owned 10 years ago, people want to upgrade every 5 years, new models. The same with phones. My phone may be completely in impeccable condition, but the fact that iPhone will release a new model, I would want to upgrade, because that's just how we are. We're so aspirational, and we're so conditioned to own and upgrade. How does one change that mindset, this gluttony mindset? Companies are constantly looking for more profitability at any cost. So it goes both ways. I'm not pinning all the blame on manufacturers or marketers. I'm taking blame equally to consumers. How do you build such a big mindset change where I say tomorrow, I don't want to own a flat, I don't want to own a car, I'm just happy paying a subscription fee? And what happens to legacy? What will my children have? I have to build for tomorrow, build for my children. Where does all that, thinking and mentality kind of morph into and become this very simplistic, minimalistic, I worship culture kind of mindset?
I'll give you a couple of examples of what we do in way of transitioning to performance-based business model, product as a service business model. And you rightly pointed out that consumer is the key. So one of the things we do is that we try to engage in consumer to paint a picture of what the future lifestyle would be like. That is a lifestyle that is resilient, that is sustainable. And I'll give you an example. In Taiwan, we are building lots of social housing, as an example, social housing. So we are advocating that the new social housing should be subscription-based, especially the equipments and furniture inside the house. As an example, the social housing will provide car if you want to travel far through what we call a subscription-based car model. Or if you need to travel a little bit shorter distance to nearby supermarkets, you can also have access to a motorcycle. And finally, if you just wanted to stroll in the park, you can also have access to bicycles without having to own them. So this is on the transportation side of it. So you can build that into this model. And actually, what we found, and we did a survey. Especially younger generation, 70 to 75% of the younger generation between age of 25 to 40 prefer this type of model. Furnitures, we don't need to own. Cars, you don't need to own. Kitchenwares, we don't need to own. In other words, do I need to own an air conditioner or I need to cool air? That's the question we asked earlier. And then do we need to own a washing machine, or you simply want to have a clothes cleaned to wear? These are the kind of things that we need to talk to the consumers. And then on the other side, as you mentioned about the manufacturer, this creates opportunities for the manufacturers. Of course, some of the businesses will probably argue the current model that is outright sale of products and materials is a preferred business model. But we all know that highly dependent on raw material business model, as it is the case of designing product for obsolescence, is not likely to be sustainable. So what we are telling the consumer, the manufacturer, is that you need to have both business model coexisting, because you do have consumers who would always want to own something, but let's not stop there. There are people who say, well, I don't want to own them. I just want to have cool air. I just want to have clean clothes to wear. So you need to have a both business model. Having one business model versus multiple business model will give businesses a more sustainable, resilient future. Less risky.
But Charles, what would that be, in terms of implications for the consumer? If I am, let's say, outsourcing and having a service contract or a subscription with a lot of, service providers, does that mean my monthly bill will be, off the charts?
Yes, actually, there are two. The service model is like a spectrum, and the scenario you should draw is that I pay for services. Yes, your monthly payments will be high, but you will not need to pay for capital investments upfront because you're not buying them. So there is a trade-off there. But I'll give you an example, also actually referred to as a product as a service model. It's not necessarily about rental, it's not even about useful performance. It's about what we call lifetime warranty. Actually, lifetime warranty is also a product as a service model. In other words, I sell it to you, I get the money from you upfront, but I provide you the lifetime service. Now, lifetime service includes three things. Generally, we talk about the improvement of the product in three areas. One is energy saving throughout this service cycle, energy saving. In other words, your energy would be of the latest technology through this maintenance program. And the other one is functionality, just like cell phones. There's an added functionality. Today's model is that we need to buy a new one. But in the service model, say, no, I bought a service, but it's your job as a manufacturer to upgrade it for me. So the functionality also need to be, in other words, the energy saving, functionality expansion, and also efficiency of the cell phone. All these three will be packaged into this maintenance program, as opposed to the current model where if you want to improve your functionality, if you want to improve your efficiency, if you want to improve your energy consumption in the ownership model, you always have to buy a new one, which actually the equipment itself creates lots of externalities, and it bears a lot of carbon emissions and all that, and we talked about that earlier. So this is one of the reasons we think for businesses to move to the product as a service model is actually a long-term, more sustainable business model in addition to selling the products.
Charles, in your experience of actually interacting with, let's say, different countries who are looking to adopt this type of a model, so different governments, consumers, companies, are you seeing a positive kind of response to kind of move to this model? Or are people, scared of change and are stuck with their scheme of things? Because let's face it, Charles, you and I are living on this planet. We'll probably die in, a few decades. So this issue of the planet collapse, or rather, actually not the planet collapse, really a threat to us humans is not our concern. The concern comes for future generations. So are governments having that kind of long-term vision, that kind of, foresight?
Actually, I totally agree with you. That's the challenge we face today. And this is one of the reasons we have been talking about reducing greenhouse gas climate crisis for nearly 30 years. COP will be holding its 29th COP in Baku. So it is a very difficult challenge. But to answer your question more directly, is that if we expect a different future, I always tell people, if you expect a different future, you must not count on sort of repeating the past, doing the same thing, expecting a different result. Like Albert Einstein said, is insanity. So we must try to do different things. To answer your question about what government is doing, I'm very positive, actually, that there is a goodwill, good intention on the governments that we deal with, both here in Taiwan and also in EU, in Europe especially, and also some of the politicians I meet in the States. They are all very, very encouraged by this new model. However, having said that, Okay, they find it very difficult to escape what I call to move away from the quote unquote linear comfort zone, the comfort zone of selling product, GDPs and all these kind of things. It is very, very difficult. So it has to be step-by-step process. And let me give you 5 steps that we are working with different governments, different countries to move, or what I call 5 policy leverages to move to transition to circular economy. The first one is that what we call circular legislations. There are a lot of legislations which were designed or drafted under linear economy. Okay, that is flawed. And I can give some example if I have time later in the future dialogues. So the first one is circular legislations. The other one is what we call circular procurement. Now, circular procurement is mainly about what government can do with government resources to encourage circular solutions. For example, the government in India, they spend a lot of money every year, probably trillions of dollars. Now, how can you carve up a small piece of that to encourage this sustainable solution, circular solutions to begin with? In other words, this would help businesses who wanted to transition to circular economy, but have a market or have a buyer for this type of services. So this is happening also here in Taiwan, circular procurement. And the third one is what we call circular financing. It's more than just green financing. Governments can, using the financing tool to encourage businesses to get into circular solutions. And the next one is called what we call circular taxation. Circular taxation is that let me put an example. If the consumers decided to have a service model rather than owning a cell phone or owning an air conditioner or owning a lighting installation, instead just want to have a cool air, instead just want to use a cell phone, what the government can do is that your service fees can be tax deductible, as an example, as an encourage for them. Now, by doing that, you can also have a tax deduction to the companies or industries who provide that service. Otherwise, the income that is drawn from providing the services can also be deductible by your by your income statement, from your income statements. And finally, the most difficult one, most challenging one, these 4 that I just gave you can be done by every government, can be done. The last one is more difficult. The last one is what we call circular accounting. Because it's a global standard, it requires global collaboration to move away from linear accounting to circular accounting. So these are specific sort of roadmaps we think the public policymakers can instigate, can draft, and put them in force to transition to circular economy, a more resilient and sustainable form of economy.
Got it. What is circular accounting? I want you to get into that bit because it's a new term, and what does that entail?
Okay, circular accounting versus linear accounting. The fundamental difference between the two is that linear accounting doesn't truly reflect the flaw, the value of our linear economy. That is, the linear economy, or linear accounting, does not include external benefits or external externalities, does not include externalities, be it positive or negative, in their accounting. In other words, if you have pollution as an example, it's not going to show on your accounting report. Okay, and give you another example, I think more specifically, in linear economy, depreciation is an example. Depreciation assumes material is an expense. Materials, raw materials, would deteriorate. But circular economy is that, as we know, for example, that raw material is likely to be in balance. So raw materials will be in scarcity. They should be protected. Their value should be preserved as opposed to depreciated. So by treating it as a depreciation in a linear form, resources should be treated as an asset that will go into their financial statement, as opposed to depreciation goes into the assets, as opposed to going to the income statement. These are the final subtleties, details of circular economy. Incidentally, that we are collaborating with some EU countries to form what we call the Circular Economy Alliance. So we can collaborate to look at draft or to architect a different form of accounting system.
I get it. So Charles, I'm assuming that if companies are being more careful with what they're doing, it needs to reflect as positive in their accounting. So for instance, ESG goals, if companies are working towards that and making efforts, it should reflect in their financial statement, which it doesn't. Am I accurate?
You are excellent. You are great. You've said it much more succinctly than I have. The current problem with ESG is that despite a lot of companies making investment in ESG, most of the reporting is treated as a non-financial disclosure.
Right.
Ideally, they should be reflected on their accounting reports, be it top line or middle line or bottom line.
But then, Charles, for instance, manufacturers who are today looked at as the biggest polluters of the planet, it isn't fair that all the penalty then rests with only manufacturers, given that marketers are equally responsible for that pollution created by the manufacturers, and consumers like you and me who buy the products are also equally equally actually at wrong to be buying those purchases. So today, for instance, manufacturers have been given the bad name as polluters. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, I agree with you, and this is the fallacy, actually, in my opinion. In other words, we are aware of the fact that globally agree on one thing, what is called polluters pay concept. Polluters pay concept. However, we need to rethink who are the polluters.
Yeah.
Much of the policies today made based on the assumption you just made, polluters are the manufacturers. And our position from circular economy perspective, being in circular, everyone is responsible. Let's say I generally talk about in what I call the 3 M's, from the raw materials, manufacturers, and marketers. Marketers, in other words, consumers and marketers, are they also responsible for the pollution? I mean, for the pollution, for the externalities? Of course, the answer is yes. So the polluters definition need to be redefined and realigned to be more inclusive between the consumer, marketer, manufacturer, even raw materials. Having said that, one of the topics we are pushing forward, or one of the movement we are pushing forward is what we call circular collaboration among all these key stakeholders to address all the externalities. Now, circular collaboration, so in short, we have a campaign called Circular Collaboration for Collective Prices. There are numerous collective prices, but the only way to mitigate these collective prices is through circular collaboration, as opposed to trying to cut the responsibility into silos, and where there's no interaction, or even worse, there's a sort of that relegate the passing on the buck concept usually takes place. It's your responsibility, it's not mine. But again, you are absolutely right to point out we need to redefine the polluters to be more inclusive. Marketer, manufacturer, raw material suppliers need to sit down and talk about it.
Realistically speaking, Charles, when do you see this model actually take momentum and reach a tipping point? In your and my lifetime?
Probably not. My life is even shorter than yours. Okay, but anyway, no, probably not. But simply because it's so important, and it would take so long to do it, and there's greater urgency to start as soon as we can. So this is so for me, for example, our foundation is founded based on, it's really not about the current businesses or current consumers. It's about future generation.
Sure. How do you think consumers can play a crucial role in driving and the adoption of circular economy, and also forcing companies to kind of adopt this model? What can we do?
Well, consumers have a lot of, as you know, manufacturers respond to only consumers. I mean, I'm talking about the marketers, brand owners, consumers' needs. So what can consumers do? There's one of the things we are doing here. We have alliances of consumers, especially younger generation, Generation Z, as an example, even XY. They get together. We talk about what we call tomorrow's lifestyle. In Chinese, but in English it's called future lifestyles. So we try to use that as a theme to align people to talk about what the future would be like based on the problem we face today. And so we have programs directly deal with consumers. And secondly, we also work with media. We work with the media to showcase some of the example we talk about, the business models that that moves away from ownership to service model as an example. So give them consumer a chance to say, well, there is a better alternative than what we are having today. So these are aligning on the demand side, educating them to be more responsible. On the supply side, we want to showcase examples where a more resilient business model are available and can be part of their future too.
Charles, do you think there are any specific industries or sectors that you believe are ripe for, the circular economy disruption?
Yes, actually, there are 3 or 4 major industries we are exploring. One is renewable energy, especially solar energy. For example, today's solar industry, solar panels are still linearly manufactured. It actually becomes a waste 20 years, 30 years down the line. So we are working to look at the technology related to solar energy, where you actually sell the energy. I mean, where the energy is produced with less carbon emissions. That's one. And the other one is actually what we call the building environment, construction industry. Construction industry use up 30% of constitute about 30% of the carbon emissions globally, and also 30% of the waste. So we need to move from a circular building, design buildings for circularity as an example, using building as what we call the material banks. All the material going to the buildings should be able to restore to its original form when the building was designed, when it was being built. So the building is another very important sector. The third one is what we call what we are familiar with, textile industries. How do you move away from high dependent of raw materials for textile today to use more locally available bio-resources, biomaterials we have. And finally is the food industry. The food industry is another industry where circular economy will come into play very significantly. Again, it's about shorten your supply chain. It's reduce the transportation cost, and also you try to from food to table. Otherwise, you try to have a locally grown material, consume locally grown food products or food produce. So these are the 4 key areas we are working on today.
That makes sense, Charles. That makes sense. Well, I think this conversation has been very in-depth, and hopefully it kind of motivates consumers, companies, governments, policymakers to start thinking at least, in this particular direction. Miles to go before we sleep, for sure, and definitely not happening in our lifetime. But hopefully people like you will, continue this advocacy, and people will learn to move from ownership to service. Any last thoughts before I let you go?
Yes. This is a very, very challenging topic. The time is too short. I hope we have more opportunity to talk about it in greater depth. But my final thought is that it is very challenging. But I'd like to quote Ernest Hemingway's phrase when he was asked, how do you change? His answer was, just get started.
Absolutely. You couldn't have said it better.
Change is very difficult, but just get started.
Absolutely.
There's great urgency on our part. Anyway, thank you for your time.
Well, we as a show have gotten started, hopefully, along with your help and your insight. Thank you very much, Charles. Truly a pleasure. And thank you for taking time out and joining us all the way from Taipei. Hopefully, I hope to meet you in person very shortly when you visit India.
Thank you. I look forward to that.
Looking forward. Thank you so much.